Okay.
I'm right on the street from the driveway.
Here we go. We are here at the Crawfordsville Public.
It's just a more, I didn't talk to them a little bit though.
We're here at the Crawfordsville District Public Library with Catherine Baker, and we are celebrating James Buchanan Elmore today, and a book that was written about Buchanan Elmore. And Catherine, we appreciate you being here in Crawfordsville today.
Thank you, Dave. It's nice to be here.
Now, this is the book launch. Really, two stories here. Let's start with your husband, Ron Baker. This book was finished 2 weeks before he died, and then you had to pick up, and I know it's got to be kind of tough for you, but explain the story there and give us the insight.
My husband was a folklorist, long-term faculty at ISU, chair of the English department at ISU for 40-some years, and most of his scholarly work was written about Indiana and Indiana places, and he particularly was interested in the writers in Indiana, and for a long time he had a file on James Buchanan Elmore, and so during COVID he gathered up materials and began to work on this, and he had finished it 2 weeks before he died. It was camera-ready copy, but he had not negotiated a contract yet with a press. And so after he died, I wanted to shepherd it into print. And
At the cemetery, what's that along?
my friend Simon Bonner, who was Ron's colleague, and we hooked up with Lexington Press and we got it in print. All I did was pick out the cover and but the rest of it was all completely done. So.
I mean, there's so many different stories. You're a 34-year-old or 34-year school teacher?
Yes, I taught at ISU for 34 years.
And your husband authored 11 books, and he was kind of I guess, an Indiana folklore aficionado.
Right. He has a PhD in folklore from Indiana University in Bloomington, and he was very interested in, particularly in Hoosier folklore. His best-selling book was Hoosier Folk Legends, which is found in most libraries, and he also wrote a number of place-name books that have been really popular in Indiana.
Well, take us through, I know there's a book that people can read as we look at the life of James Buchanan Elmore. He lived in Alamo, the Bard of Alamo. Let's see, he was a school teacher, he was a farmer, he ran for office, he knew politicians, a little bit about his life.
He was a busy man, obviously.
Yeah.
An interesting man, a kind of fascinating man. And what I think is most interesting, he was a very successful farmer, he was a successful school teacher, he was a community activist, and he always identified himself as a poet. He loved writing poetry. And it wasn't academic poetry, it wasn't classic poetry like Walt Whitman or Whittier or Longfellow and those guys. But he wrote poetry that people appreciated. It was printed in a lot of newspapers, not only here, but all around the Midwest, and even the New York Times. And he was written up by a lot of people. You know, one funny story I didn't tell at this talk, Mark Twain had a collection of books that he called his library of horrible poets, you know, and horrible books.
Yeah.
And he had Elmore's books in his library, but he said they weren't bad enough to be in the horrible poet group. So it was kind of a backhanded compliment, you know. So he was well known. If he hit the radar of Mark Twain, then he was pretty well known all around.
Explain ethnographer.
Ethnographer, a person who studies or writes about culture. And he wrote about his culture. He was what they call participant of group. He was a member of that culture, and he wrote about the lives he lived and the lives of other people around him. He wrote about their beliefs and their customs and their work bees and their pranks and their music and their gossip. And he did write that book 25 Years in Jacksonville, but when he went to Jacksonville after it was published, he got egged out of town. He Jacksonville recognized those stories and they weren't real happy about that. But he was very popular and well known in his day. And Ron just felt he should be remembered because he was a vibrant part of the Hebrew literary heritage.
How was it meeting descendants of James Buchanan Elmore here today?
So much fun, what nice people they are. And, I had met William Hauser earlier because they need to sign permission for us to reprint stuff that had been printed before. And, so I was surprised there were so many of them, and I'm just tickled to death to be able to do things.
And a little bit of our connection, you lived next door to Eva Core while Al was growing up, and sister, Mickey was there as well. We always remember Mickey, but
That's right.
a little bit about that time in Terre Haute and your recollections of Eva Core.
Let me tell you a funny story. In August of 1966, Ron and I moved to Terre Haute. He had taken a new job as a young faculty member. We'd been there 2 days. There was a knock on my door. I opened the door, and there was this pretty woman, and she had a little girl with her, and she says, "Welcome to Terre Haute. How old is your little girl?" And I'm like, "She's 3. She said, "My little girl is 3 also. Maybe they can be friends." Well, Eva and I became friends too. And finally one day, after several months, I'm like, "You got that Zaza Gabor accent. Where are you from?" And she says, "That is a very long story." And she showed me the tattoo of her arm. And over the years, I got to know Eva really, really well. And when I first met Eva, no one knew about her as a Holocaust survivor. No one knew where she came from. She was a draftsman for an architect in Terre Haute. I babysat for Alex's sister. And Alex was in school by that time, and we just got to be very close friends over the years. When she finally realized that she had a story to tell that was important, she began to do that, and she developed the museum candles in Terre Haute, and I was on the board there for a number of years. And I'm very proud of the work that Eva did. She from people knowing nothing about her, she became a world-known figure, and a much sought-after person to speak at all kinds of medical conferences and so forth. She was determined to bring the story of the twins used for medical experiments to light, because although there have been stories about the Holocaust, no one had really ever focused on the twins. Her husband Mickey was also an Auschwitz survivor, and while Eva was a child of 10 and had only been in the camps a year or less, Mickey was older than she, and he had been in the camps for 4 years. And that's an amazing survival story too. And it was harder for him because he was in the camps as an adult. He had an adult memory of it, she had a child's memory of it. And so their perspectives on it were different, obviously, but she became a champion for the people who never had a chance. And I'm very proud of the work she did. I think it's marvelous.
Wow, and history, you know a lot of history. I mean, that's amazing that you have that connection, and then the Indiana folklore connection. And I got one last question. What would James Buchanan Elmore be doing if he were alive today?
That's an interesting question, because his uncle, Thomas Elmore, and his father, I think, although he doesn't ever say it specifically, but the stories he tells seem to me to indicate his father also, they were conductors on the Underground Railroad. That took a lot of guts back then. We think we have a politically divided society now. What the heck was it back then? You know, it was kind of risking your life to do that work and to save those people's lives. As you know, the Underground Railroad kind of came up the Wabash River and through Fountain County, Montgomery County, and on to Michigan against Canada. And he unlike many chronicles of the time, he actually names addresses, and it tells how they moved them, who moved them, and where they were hidden, and how they were disguised to move them to other places. He talks about the signs, like if the rocking chair on the porch is turned a certain way, it's not safe, don't come in, go on by. If there's smoke out of a chimney, kind of like in the Pope here, then you know it's okay, or those kind of things. And so many people that wrote about that time don't give that level of detail. So that's a valuable information for us now. I think we can look at, maybe this isn't the first time our society has ever been divided over political questions and the human rights questions and that sort of thing.
So he might have been a journalist, kind of been maybe as one of the, I guess, a commentator slash journalist.
Perhaps, and I think he'd probably be running for office again. I think he was an interesting man. I'm guessing he had an ego as big as a whole outdoors. He was kind of an actor too.
Well, if you're hanging out with Mark Twain and James Woodcomb Riley,
yeah, obviously, interesting fellow.
Oh, well, it was great to see the, James Buchanan Elmore family here, we'll say, and great to talk to you. And I know the library here has the book. They've got some records from Ron's research.
Right, we have gifted his papers for this book to their archives, so.
And we thank Deli Craig for her work. I know she will dig into all of this as our local historian here at the library. And again, Catherine, great to have you here in Crawfordsville, and I know we'll keep the conversation going later.
That's a great day. Thank you so much.
That is Catherine Baker, and again, her husband Ron Baker wrote the book, James Buchanan Elmore, and we launched it here in Crawfordsville this afternoon at the Crawfordsville District Public Library. Clean.